this video, we're going to do this problem on domain and range from the graph of a continuous function. So the first thing that we're going to do is identify which of the symbols that we are using. So we see we have some options here with square brackets and some options with the round parenthesis brackets. We use square brackets when we have a number included. And that can look like a solid dot, although it isn't always. And we use round brackets to indicate that a number is not included. And that can look like an open dot, but not always. So now we're going to talk about domain and range. When we're looking at domain, we're looking at possible x values. And when we're looking at range, we're looking at possible y values. So the question is, what x values does the graph have and what y values does the graph have? And the interval tells us the first number is the lowest possible number, the second number is the highest possible number, and then the type of brackets tell us whether that number is included or not. So let's start with domain. So what I want to look at is I want to look at on the x-axis where the graph is. So I see that there is a point on the graph at -3. There's nothing below -3 on the graph. So my graph is going to start at -3, and then it's going to go up to 5. But at 5 on the x-axis, there's an open circle. So that means that 5 is actually not included. The point at -3 is included because there's a solid dot there. So this tells me that I'm going from -3 to 5. And at -3, I'm going to have the square bracket. At 5, I'm going to have the parenthesis bracket. And we always write the interval with the smaller number first. So this is -3 with the square bracket, comma 5 with a round bracket or a parenthesis bracket. Now let's look at the range. So for the range, we're looking at possible y values. So again, I'm going to trace this back to the y-axis. We don't have anything on the graph above 3. Our highest number is 3, and since we have a solid circle there, that's going to be a value that we're going to include in our range, and so we're going to use the square bracket. Now my graph goes all the way down to -5. So I'm going to trace it down here, but at -5, it's an open circle. So that means I'm going to use the parenthesis bracket around -5. So this graph, again, remember we start with, even though I started up here, we start with the smaller number. So I'm going to start with -5 and a open bracket, and then I'm going up to 3 with a solid dot, which means I have the square bracket. So this is going to be my range. So I'm going to choose the brackets that I want to use first, and then I would type in the 2 numbers. Now let's do another example. So for this one, start with the domain. So I'm starting on the x-axis. I see that I'm going from -3, where it's open, all the way up to 2, where it's also open. So for this one, my domain is going to be parentheses on both sides, -3 to 2, and both are open circles, so they're both parentheses. Now let me look at my range. So I'm going from -4, This time I'll go from bottom to top. Now this time it's a little bit different because I'm not stopping at that circle. My graph continues because there's points on the graph up here. So my highest point on the graph is actually at 5. So for this one, my range, my smallest number is -4, and that's going to be a parenthesis because there's an open circle at that point on the graph. My largest number on the graph is 5, and that one is going to have a square bracket because that is a point on the graph. There's not a solid circle there on my graph. It just is where the graph is hitting that point in this curve. So I would put a square bracket around that.